Welcome to another episode of Prevailing Through Pain, where we have extraordinary women that tell their stories. And today we have Tonya Miles. Tonya is a mother, she's a wife, and she's an entrepreneur. She's the owner of Miles Business Services. Thank you, Tonya, for being here.
Well, thank you so much, Karen, for inviting me.
So, Tonya, I know that I've been talking to you a little bit about your life, and you've experienced a lot in such a short period of time as it deals with death. And so we want to get to know you, but I think about all, like I said, at different points, at different experiences with everything that goes on, that's going on in the world, and some of the things that were really hard within the United States in 2020 as it comes to African American men and what's going on. But we're going to back up a little bit because at an early age, I know you lost a father. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how it
Yes.
affected you as a child?
My father died when I was 9 years old. Basically came home from school one day and found out he was gone. And I was pretty young at that point, so I didn't really understand the effects of it. I didn't understand death. So it kind of took me a while to really understand what happened when he died.
And you said
I was 9
you were
when he
9.
died.
Okay. And so you have siblings.
I have three siblings, two sisters and a brother. So at that point, my mom basically had to raise four children on her own. And and the thing about it is, my mom is she's a phenomenal woman. She was able to raise us, and we never lacked for anything. She took very good care of us along the way, but not having a father growing up, it was hard.
Okay.
So
So, not having a father growing up, you have four siblings. You're number what?
three siblings.
Three siblings.
I'm number three.
You're number 3.
Next to
Okay.
the baby.
Okay. So, your older siblings are males, females?
Two sisters and one brother.
Okay. And the brother is the youngest.
Yes, baby brother.
Baby brother.
But he's the big brother now.
Okay. And so, do you feel that with a younger brother, did you feel that being right over him, you had to protect him, be that?
For up until probably maybe junior high or so, and then he kind of became more of the protector of us.
Okay. All right. Probably by default.
By
not
default,
being
yeah,
over
he
Miller.
became the man of the house. So
Okay.
yeah.
So as far as relationships, and I'm speaking from my experience because I didn't have a father in the house. I mean, my grandfather raised me, but he was older, and yeah. So I tended to get into relationships that weren't the best relationships, and I think for me it was looking for a father figure. So how were you with relationships with the lack of, and I mean, you may have had uncles that were close or whatever, I don't know.
Speaking of that, I did have some uncles and stuff, but nobody who really stepped up and took like a more of a fatherly role. So I didn't have a good male role model to look at. So as far as choosing relationships, I didn't know how to choose. So I didn't know what to look for. So one of the things that I felt like, I was brought up in church. So that was all I knew to look for, was somebody who was who had a similar belief system to myself.
Which is a good thing.
So that's pretty much as I got into my late teens and everything. I met my ex-husband, and that was what drew me to him, was we had a similar belief system. So that's what I kind of fell back on. But when you don't have that role model to look at, you really don't know to look for other things. So I looked for that, but I didn't look for anything else.
Okay. And so how old were you when you all got married?
I was 19 when I got married.
Still a baby.
Huh?
I said, still a baby.
Yes, still a baby for sure. So had no business getting married. And then shortly after that, we welcomed our first child in our first year of marriage. So, and then a second child in our next year of marriage. My two oldest boys were only 10 and a half months apart.
Really? And
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, they were referred to as, I think people called it ghetto twins at the time. Because they ended up in the same grade. So in school, they were always mistaken for twins.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. So now you're a young wife,
Mm-hmm.
a young mother. Talk about that a little bit.
Um, it was difficult because, like I said, we had no business getting married in the first place, and to bring children into the world at such a young age when you're trying to figure out who you are. Um, it was hard. We had a very turbulent marriage. Although my ex-husband, he was very charismatic. He just basically people loved him. He had a personality where if you needed to talk, he was there to listen. He was there to uplift you, give you advice. So that was one of the things I fell in love with him as well. But I found myself having to be the grown person in the marriage and make sure that my kids were taken care of, make sure all the household needs were taken care of. So I felt like I had a friend, but not a partner. So
He was also a musician,
he
right?
was a talented musician, very good at what he did. And when I met him, it started out with these big visions and big dreams of I'm going to own a whole basically community, and my whole family's going to live there. It's going to be called, he had the name of the street picked out, and he just talked about how big he was going to be and how much money he was going to make. And that was from day one when I met him up until 18 years later when we were getting a divorce.
Oh, you were married for
So
18 years?
yeah, we were married for 18 years. One of the things that I was hoping for was to stay with him until my kids were adults. I wanted them to be raised in a two-parent home, so I didn't want to break my family up. So as the years went by, it just got harder and harder, and then I had to make a decision.
Wow. You definitely sound old school when you say I wanted to stay in until my children got. I mean, I hear that African American women are the strongest people in the United States because of all that we've endured from going back to slavery, where we took care of masses' children,
Hmm.
masses' household, and then came in home and took care of our families. And so you sacrificed, it sounds like a lot, took a lot internally because you wanted to make your marriage work for your children to have a two-parent household. So within that time, because I know you went to school at some point because you have a degree. So were you in school?
Yeah, and that was one of the things about my ex-husband. He was supportive in that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so he did take care of the kids so I could attend school. So it took me a while. It took me like maybe 8 years to get my first my bachelor's degree. But I eventually got it done. Having three kids in the process. Um, After having my first and second at almost 20 and almost 21, I had another one at 26. So yeah, so three kids later, about a year or so after that last one was born, I was able to get my bachelor's degree.
Kudos to you. So if you don't mind me asking, what was the bending point, the straw that said, "Yeah, it's time for me to move on"?
Really, it was to the point of he came to pick me up from work one day because we shared one car because we couldn't afford to buy two cars because I was the only one working two jobs and three jobs a lot of the time. So He came to pick me up at work and we ran out of gas in the parking lot at work. So
Yeah, that would have did.
we're pushing the car. I'm in the car guiding it, and he's pushing the car over to the Quick Trip over, like it was kind of across. There was like my office building, and there was like a restaurant next door, and then the Quick Trip was on the other side. So we're pushing the car over to the Quick Trip, and I was just like, I am not 19. I was like, I have a decent job. I have a good job. I've worked hard. I'm not living like this anymore. So that was one of the things that just where I was like, I can't do this anymore. There were a couple of other things that happened that I don't want to get into today, but yeah, that right there was just like, I can't do this anymore. So one of the things about me is I think a lot. So I would take a piece of paper and I would write down pros, cons. Should I leave? Should I stay? Once the should I leave was overwhelming, the should why I should stay, then I went ahead and left. I was like, this is enough. I can't do this anymore. My life is just, it's not moving forward. I'm stuck.
That's funny you say that. I had a sheet with the pros and cons as far as relationships. And unfortunately, for most of mine, the cons were a lot longer than the pros. And
Yes.
yeah, it took me a little while to figure that out. And I was like, okay. So I started moving faster than I would have.
Hmm.
But so now you are a single parent of three boys.
Single parent of three boys. And I will say that I did go back to school again during my marriage and got a master's degree um, in business so that I could, because I knew at some point I would have to take care of my kids on my own with probably no support. So, so single with the three boys, and actually it like I felt like I was able to just take control and make things better for myself and for them financially. But of course, divorce is never easy on children.
And so take us to the Sunday when your boys were coming home from church.
So a couple of months after my ex-husband and I separated for the final time, I actually went and stayed with my mom for a while because during that process we did decide to sell our marital property. Um, my son Donovan, he was 16. He wakes up that morning and he tells me, he asked me, he said, "Are we going to church this morning, Mom?" And I was like, "No, I don't feel like going to church." And then he was like, "Well, I want to go. I need to get my church in." So I said, "Okay, I'll run you up there." So I took him to church with every intention on picking him up. He texts me later that day and he tells me, "Hey, you don't have to come pick me up. My cousin Jamal and my other son, Adrian, my middle son, had spent the night at Jamal's. They're gonna come up here and they're gonna get me. And then I'm gonna go over to their house, to my sister's house." So maybe 30 minutes later, I get a phone call and I'm being told um that they've been shot. They've been shot. And I'm I'm like, what are you talking about? And I have no idea what they're talking about. And they were like, all of them, they're all shot. And still I'm just like in shock. I'm like, what are you talking about? Donovan, Adrian, they're shot, the person tells me from the other line. And so at that point I'm just like, I can't believe it. I'm like, I don't know. They don't know what they're talking about. Like, I didn't believe them. But then, I try to call my sister because, her son was in the car as well. And she didn't answer. So then I go ahead and get in the car and I drive over to her house because at this point, I don't even know where they are. And then I think I text the person who called me and I was like, but where are you guys? And they told me they were on Cincinnati where the hill is. So I go get my sister and I'm hysterical. She's calm because she's just like, no, Jamal just left here. I don't know what you're talking about. So she gets in the car and we drive over and there's just fire trucks, police cars, people standing around. My nephew's car rammed into the brick wall, but the kids weren't there. So still, I'm just I'm just in shock. But at that point, there were 5 boys in the car. Um, my 2 boys were in the back seat along with their cousin. Their cousin was shot in the eye. He lost an eye. My oldest son, Donovan, he was shot in the chest and he dies the next day. And then my middle son was also shot in the chest. And come to find out later that week that he's paralyzed from the chest down. Um, my nephew actually he was shot as well. He was driving. But he fully recovered. He still has some symptoms or side effects of what happened. A collapsed lung is what happened during the shooting. And then there was one other boy in the car, a friend of my nephew's. He would manage to get down in the crawl space underneath the. He had an old car, like where you had like the big front. So he managed to get down in the crawl space underneath the glove compartment, and he got grazed by the bullet, so he didn't get shot. So but at that point when we're all there at the site, they're telling us, okay, they're at 3 different hospitals, and we're like, well, who's where? We don't know. So a lot of my church family, a lot of friends and family, we all just disperse and we go to all the different hospitals and try to figure out who's where. So I sat at the closest hospital for probably 3 or 4 hours before I even knew which son it was.
I'm so
So
sorry.
yeah, so it was a very difficult Sunday to say the least. One that it one of the it was probably the worst day of my life.
And I remember seeing the car on the news, and it was horrific. And it was so many years ago, I know, but I was going to say it's still in my mind. It's still vivid. So I know I can't even imagine how you feel, but from what I recall, the drive by was not targeted at them.
No.
They weren't even the people that.
No, and it's something how, when black boys get hurt, it always originally the original assumption is that, oh, they were involved in something.
Hmm.
But in this case, no. The policeman, after saying that they were into something, quickly came back and said, oh, this was a group of athletes and just regular kids. Like they were not into anything. And I will say that the Tulsa Police Department, they didn't sleep, I feel like, until they found out what happened. But it ended up being that the boy in the car, one of the boys in the car had been shot a couple of days prior, gang related activity. And the car that was used in his shooting looked similar to my nephew's car. So my nephew's car passed them while they were at a gas station, and they chased him down and used I believe it was a SKA or some type of automatic rifle, or I mean really a gun that you shouldn't even have on the streets. Like it's a gun that should be only provided for the military, but used that automatic weapon, and I believe it was something like 50 rounds, shot 50 rounds into the car. So, my son doesn't remember anything. My middle son, all he remembers is laughing and joking and then waking up in the hospital. So that's one of the things that I can say is a blessing for him is some of the other kids really they remember, laying on the ground, being shot up and seeing some of the things. But my son Adrian, he has no memory of that day other than picking Donovan them up from church and then they're laughing going down the street.
So now you're having to you have a son that's now paralyzed, and so that was probably just as much of relearning for you as it was for him how to start getting around, knowing that this is going to be a part of life now for him. So he would have been, was he 15 at the time or six?
He actually turned 16 right before the shooting. My oldest son was about to turn 17 and he had just turned 16. So they were both 16 at the time.
So how did that weigh on the family with?
It was heavy. I mean, it was a very, very difficult time. And it's just one of those things where when something tragic like that happens, there is no getting back to normal. There is like life has changed forever. So I know my mom, she was working. She basically was retired, but she had picked up a job at one of the schools and she couldn't go back to work. Like it affected all of us. Of course I went back to work because I had to. I had kids to support still. But it was difficult. I couldn't concentrate. So not only was I dealing with the loss of my oldest son, but like you said, my middle son, he's now in this wheelchair. Now, thank God we did take him to a facility, a rehab facility, where they taught him how to be independent. So he drives. He's very independent.
Okay, Tonya, let's stop right there and take a break, and we'll be right back.
This lady can't be stopped. She just can't be stopped. She gets ideas and goes with it and follows through and knows the connections, knows what to do. And I'm really so impressed with her beyond what I knew her as, that it's really remarkable. It's really remarkable what she's made of herself.
Okay, we're back. So, Tonya, I know it's been a while. I still give you my condolences because you never get over the loss of someone. I can't even imagine, like I said, a child. So you were telling us that if you had gone back to work, but you still, your mom is trying to be supportive, and I do know you have a supportive family. So at any point, did you all seek any kind of counseling to help with what everyone was going through? Because like you said, you have one child you have to be there for, but you're still
Right.
grieving the loss of a child you had just lost.
Well, over the years, I did seek some counseling. But honestly, talking to family and friends and just allowing myself to have the good and the bad days, but just reminding myself that you still got people depending on you and you just got to kind of wake up every day and put your foot forward. Just put your, just keep going, keep moving. So, but I think that, my support system was there to listen to me and that shoulder to cry on. And ultimately, I feel like they helped me kind of get through it.
Look, that's a blessing to have that support system. I talk to so many people that still struggle with the loss of someone. Counseling for a lot of African American people is taboo. We can get through this. God is going to provide, and God does provide.
Yes.
But I feel that God also gives us resources, and sometimes if we don't have someone, and sometimes we have someone and still need those resources. So I'm grateful for that you had people that you felt would listen to you. So many times we try to tell somebody how they should feel. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but
I have. That brings me to a relationship after marriage. And the guy told me, "You're a Christian, get over it."
oh,
Yeah. And I was like, "What?"
how long did that relationship last?
Longer than it should have. And hence, yeah, not having a father and not knowing what to look for.
But you should get over it. Wow.
Yeah, he told me that I just needed to get over it, that I was a Christian and move on.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, you don't move on from losing a kid. And at that point, it was still like 3-4 years after it had happened. So it was still recent. So, but like you said, I did seek professional help as well to try to just learn how to deal with the grief. And one of the counselors, they told me, they said, if your support system is working for you, then continue to use that. If a person is in a place in life where they don't have a support system, then they should seek support groups, and as well as seek professional help and going to therapy, and whatever they need to do to be able to continue to move forward, because it's not something that you ever get over. You just learn to deal with it, and you learn to live with it, and then you also pull from the good things. So I could tell so many stories about my oldest son, and things that make me laugh, and I try to focus on that.
So you get past that point, and then their dad.
Yes. So I believe it was 6 years after my son died. Then my husband, my ex-husband, he dies as well of cancer. So it started with colon cancer. He had a surgery, and that prolonged his life, I believe, maybe a year and a half or 2 years. And then he eventually dies of the cancer right after Thanksgiving, 6 years later. Very difficult time, especially for my kids. And I feel like it was kind of like an ultimate turning point for them, in their faith system and their belief system as well, because they just couldn't understand. Okay, my brother's gone, now my dad's gone. So very, very difficult time.
So how did you help your, especially like your youngest son? Because I know for younger kids it's even harder. Any of us at any ages is hard, but for your
Yes.
youngest son, him being so young when his brother died, and then, like you said, and then his dad died. So, how do you feel that he was just kind of introverted behind that, or he was able to talk about it, and you were able to help him to understand? Because like you said, testing of the faith, because
Yes.
being raised in the church.
And I'll start with my middle son first. It made him change his eating habits. So now he's like a vegan. Like he was, he just decided that I'm going to take better care of myself.
Because of his dad's.
My youngest son, his dad was like his best friend. Like they would be on the phone at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm walking in there like, "What are you doing?" "I'm talking to daddy." And I'm like, well, Daddy, he has to go to sleep. But so he just it had he took it very, very hard. And all I could do was just try to be there for him. And then also, thank God he has my brother, who who's also been there for him. But of course, that doesn't replace losing your dad. So yeah, so he probably could use some counseling to this day to honestly help him work through all of the loss. So it's still a path that he's on to just learn to live in beyond that point of grief and learn to deal with it. So I'm just, praying that he continues to get the help that he needs so that he can really effectively live his life and be successful.
So you left Oklahoma and you came to Texas. So now you're doing your own thing in Texas. Your business started up, and so things are going well. Tell us a little bit about.
Yeah. So a year after um the incident that happened with my boys, I decided I just needed a change. So I moved to Texas. I moved here with a job that I thought I was going to have that fell through. So I moved here with no job and probably a month's worth of money.
Oh,
So, so like I said, I have a good support system. My brother and my sister-in-law allowed me to stay with them for a few months while I figured out what my next step was. So shortly after that, I get an apartment and I take on some contract work, and um, and things just really started to take off for me. I was able to find um, a good job, and but one of the things I always envisioned myself doing was being a business owner. So that is what I worked towards, was owning my own business, and that's where I am today. I own my own business, my own accounting and bookkeeping business and tax services.
so I'm gonna dip back into pain.
Yes,
No pun intended, with that being your maiden name. Um, Terrence, your brother-in-law.
yes,
So your in-laws lose, and I think Joy was their oldest son,
yes,
to
yeah.
cancer, and then Terrence, one of their twins.
2 years later,
Can you tell us that situation?
Terrence, we always called him he was kind of like that teddy bear, that gentle, just gentle soul, gentle spirit. Terrence was a sweetheart, but Terrence did battle with addiction. So in the midst of him dealing with that, he was um, he was shot and killed by a Tulsa police. And that the story was all over the news. But basically, at the time that he was shot and killed, he had his hands up, and the situation could have been handled differently. So his life was needlessly taken.
I remember the listening to the tape, and the police officer that shot him was a female, white female. Her husband was in a helicopter,
Yes.
and he says to her, from the tape that I'm listening to, "Oh, he looks like a big bad black one."
Mm-hmm.
And they're laughing as
Yeah.
she shoots him.
He also made a comment during that time. It's time for the taser. So, but she didn't pull out the taser. She pulled out the gun, and she shot him.
I, I was looking at that because I think Terrence, was it 2016 that
Yes.
happened with Terrence?
Yes.
And Renee and Adder, I think is her name. It says in memorandum, I can't breathe. And it just lists all of these young African American men that were killed, unarmed African American men that were killed. And Terrence is on this list
Yes.
of the African American men. And you know, I I think about me being in California working in Marin County, which is one of the wealthiest counties in America. And I was in the hospital late that night, and I was supposed to be in Ohio the next day. I was supposed to fly out for a meeting, and Donnie was supposed to be meeting me in Ohio for this meeting. So I leave the hospital at 8 o'clock that night because it was just a long day that I was dealing with some doctor issues. And I decided, I'm going to go to the gym and work out. So the apartment complex that I was in, I ran in the house and I took my clothes off and I put on some workout clothes. Well, it's cool, so I put a hoodie on. I throw the hoodie on my head and I'm getting ready to run over to the gym when this bright light hits me in the face before I could turn the corner. And I remember thinking, oh, that light is bright. And I said, I kind of did like this, but I was turning to run. And they said, "Ho, stop right there." And so I'm looking, I'm thinking, they're talking to me. And so this officer gets out of his car and he has a gun on me. I throw the hoodie off my head thinking if he sees I'm a woman, he never saw anything but a black person
Right.
running. So I must have done something wrong. And so he says, I have the suspect. And so me with my mouth, I'm like, suspect? You know, he's talking to the speaker, suspect. And I said, what did I do? You just need to be quiet. And so a couple of minutes later, it probably was a couple of seconds, but it seemed, you know, I'm seeing him looking over my shoulder, and I turn around and there's two officers behind me and they both have their guns out. And I'm scared to death because it's dark where I'm standing and all I could think about was Oscar Grant. Oscar Grant was the young African American male that was killed from a BART police station on New Year's Eve. And they said they thought they had a taser, but they shot him in the back. And all I could think was Oscar Grant. And I'm sitting here because they said, when I said, what did I do? He said, well, we heard that someone was breaking in cars. And so me with a little bit of arrogance, and I said, I don't need any of these raggedy cars. But when I heard click, click, all I could see was my life right there. And I'm thinking, this is how people die because I'm the only one here. And let me take it back. I reached into my little thing to pull my keys out to say, actually stay over here in these apartments. But that's when the click, click, click was. And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe they could have thought I had a gun. And so I calmed down because I'm thinking Donnie's going to show up at that meeting in Ohio. She's going to get a call saying I'm dead. The news is going to say I was resisting arrest or I pulled a gun or whatever. That was just that split second. It's like, Karen, what do you do? You know, and so I just calmed down and I said, I have a towel around my neck. I have a water bottle in my hand. So unless you think I'm going to hurt somebody by throwing water on them, I beat them to death with my towel. Can I please go? And the officer said, well, it checks out that you're okay. They didn't even check anything. It checks out that you're okay. So I went over to the gym because I was just trying to get away from them. But when I got inside the gym, my legs were shaking so bad and I couldn't work out. I called my oldest sister and I said, I just need you to talk to me. I just need you to help me calm down so I can get back to my apartment. And then I went back to the apartment, and so it just, it saddens me, like I said, when I looked at this list because I knew Terrence. I knew Terrence's parents before Terrence was even born. And when I looked at the list and I'm saying, to see the long list of all these young people,
It just doesn't make any sense.
it doesn't make any sense.
At all. Because I'm sure a white person can walk around with a hoodie on all day and not
And
be
it's cool.
bothered. And it's
It's
okay.
cool.
If there was a suspect they were looking for, they wouldn't go after that white person just because they have a hoodie on. So it doesn't make sense.
So, okay, I'm sorry. I digressed a little bit. But so you lose your brother-in-law, and I know his sister was, his twin was an
Yes.
attorney, wasn't she?
No, she has a doctorate in physical therapy.
Okay, okay. But I know that that family
Hmm.
was the wrong family as far as if you
Yeah.
thought something was going to be pushed under the rug.
Yes, they have turned that pain into a whole revolution. So they have some awesome things going on there, in just trying to get the community to recognize the error of its ways and change.
That's great. You know, it always warms my heart when we can turn tragedy into a teaching moment and flip that what someone did bad,
Hmm.
for good. That'll never bring Terrence back and that hole that's still in the family's heart, but that it just wasn't words of they did us wrong, but that the family pushed through to make awareness is the word I want to say, that made awareness, and even Tulsa look at things that they could do better.
Yes, yeah. The Terrence Crutcher Foundation they're very active in the community there in Tulsa, and they're making a difference.
Excellent. So today you have a successful, like I said, business of your own. You're remarried to a wonderful guy,
Yes.
and hey, I tell everybody that the sky's the limit. I'm proud of you turning your pain into prevailing through your pain,
Hmm.
and still being there for others. I know that you also lost a sister, and so the loss of a sibling for me was worse than the loss of a parent.
Yes. And it's something how it happened during the 2020, during COVID. But it was kind of like when they were coming up with the shots and the that you could take to try to lessen the blow of COVID. And so we really thought that she was going to make it. Like, we didn't think that that was going to be the end of her story. So she died December 31st, my oldest sister, of 2020, alone, um, in the hospital. They would not allow us to see her. We drove down there and tried, but they were not letting people into the hospitals during COVID. So so yeah, that was a tremendous loss and a big blow to our family.
Sorry, and she was a beautiful person. I knew Luanya, yeah. So, what what advice would you tell to that young woman, that Tonya at 19 years old, that person that may be married right now and has a child, or in a situation that they're dealing with, well, with the loss of someone? What words of encouragement would you tell them?
First of all, if you're in a marriage where you feel like you are stuck and that person is not willing to grow with you and move forward, reassess. You may need to go ahead and do something different, if that person's not willing to work on things with you. Um, when you lose someone, although tragic and although you will grieve, continue to move forward. Life continues to to be there, and don't let that be the end of your story. Just keep moving forward. If you have to find a support system because you don't have a support system on your own, go ahead and go to your local churches, find support groups, anything that's going to help you to be able to get through it and continue to move forward.
Thank you, Tonya. And as Tonya said, there are support systems out there, whether it's a church, there are crisis centers, you can Google everything and find whatever you need, but you're not alone. If you're alone, it's only because you want to be alone. So please reach out and get the support that you need. So thank you, Tonya, for sharing your story. How can someone reach you if they're looking for a great person to help them with their financial needs?
You can reach out to me at my phone number, 214-699-8615. My website is milesaccountingandfinance.com. My Facebook is Miles Accounting and Finance.
Thank you for being on the show. That concludes another episode of Prevailing Through Pain.
Those in the know SIPS Consults. SIPS Consults is hiring. Confident, competent, and consistent. Starting as a consultant and a volunteer, SIPS has grown into a dynamic group of stellar sterile processing professionals, offering excellent benefits, 401k, and consultant in training program. We are hiring certified technicians, leads, supervisors, interim managers, educators, coordinators. Apply at recruiting@sipsconsults.com or dial 1-866-615-7977.